In the gloom, let's start. Welcome one and all. Hope you enjoyed your short summer break, if you managed to have one. So let's start with item 1, apologies for absence. We have an apology from Mark Wilkinson. Declarations of interest.
How do we use these now? Yes, get a house in my ward.
Yes,
although not a member of this committee, item 14 relates to a contract with HCS. By virtue of being managing director of HCS over their financial interest, and if there's a discussion outside of
Sorry, Chair. Although I'm not a member of this committee, can I declare an interest in Jenner House as it forms part of the old Harlow board?
indeed.
I declare an interest in Jenner House as I live in Old Harlow. Sorry, it's not my ward. Sorry.
Right, so if those are all noted, let's move on to item 3, the minutes, pages 4 to 12. Are we content that those are an accurate record of our meeting in July? Good, thank you. Matters arising. Councillor Combs.
Thank you. It relates. Sorry. Relates to item 24, written questions from councillors.
You need a page number for that?
Well, the minutes.
Page
Page 11.
Page
11.
11.
You will recall, I think the committee will recall that you had a 8-minute reply to both questions. Sorry?
Was it as long as that?
It was indeed. I checked it on YouTube this afternoon. Oh, that's both the outset and the supplementary. But there were a couple of comments in there which are worthy of comment for analysis. For example, in the supplementary, you said, and I quote from the minutes, Harlow had to borrow a quarter of £1 billion to buy its own council houses. However, the rental income covered the interest on its loan and some of the capital. If you go back to full council 12th of February 2012, the housing management 30-year plan approved the borrowing of 208 million, which is near a fifth of a billion, not a quarter of a billion, which was entirely repayable over the 30-year life of the business plan. So it could repay both the interest and the capital. That's how the scheme was set up to do. You also went on to say, based on that paragraph, that as a result of the, per annum for 4 years reduction in rent is damaging your ability to repay the loan, and we've been forced to take out. We are able to pay only the interest, okay, and so increased borrowing is simply out. Well, bearing in mind that rent increases are starting again next year, a resurrected 30-year business plan will provide for a payment of those loans, and therefore any new loans taken out to build can be repaid from the rental income of the new properties over a 30 or 60 year period, which is the expected lifespan of the asset. And just a final comment.
Questions, I think.
It's under matters arising.
It's matters arising.
He's quoting what you said.
Yeah.
And just one final comment. The original idea for reform of the national HRA was first made by John Healy, who was then Housing Minister in 2009. So it wasn't a Conservative idea.
Yes, Councillor.
It would be clear about the 205 million. 208 million. That's clearer. over the 35-year period,
30 years.
over the 35-year period, it would actually, because we've had to delay some of the payments, would actually come out at about what you were talking about, Chair. So we should actually be quite clear what we're talking about.
Sorry, with the Secretary.
You've made your comment.
Clarification.
Councillor Carter, I think you've made your comment and now people are responding. So I'd thank you to wait your turn and go through the chair. Councillor Downs.
No, Mr. Chair, it's right what you said.
Oh, good, thank you. Councillor Carter, I'm going to comment. You can indicate you want to speak, and then when I am ready, I will ask you to. But, you know, as I tell my year 10s, putting your hand up and shouting out is not a polite way to behave in a classroom, and it is not a polite way to behave here.
Being
Thank you.
arrogant.
Oh, come on, Carl. Come on.
Thank you. So, I am confident in the veracity of the reply that I gave you. I spoke at length to our finance officer and he supported me in the things that I said there. I think the comment was, there is nothing in there that isn't a statement of fact.
If I may come back just on clarification on what Councillor Danvers said.
Yes, Councillor.
Apart from him getting all the numbers wrong, he implied that because of the delayed repayment of the debt, we will end up paying more. Well, you've already said that at the moment we are paying the interest on that debt, so the debt is not increasing, we're not borrowing anymore, and we are covering interest. So the 208 million remains at 208 million.
Interest. I think.
Yes, you're paying interest, for God's sake.
Through the chair.
And I think the substantive point here is that the initial loan was huge and we were required to take it out. And that changes in the rent reduction has affected our ability to repay the loan as we've hoped to, and has affected our ability to borrow more at the moment. Things may well change.
Chair, can I just have one more?
I'm happy to, but then I want to move on.
Yeah, we were debt free. We paid for the housing development corporation. We were debt free, and the Tory government imposed on this town over £200 million debt. There's nothing to be proud of or to shout from the rooftops about. It's a disgrace that that happened.
It was your idea.
Right, moving on. Quite lost my place. Written questions from the public, there are none. Written questions from councillors, there are none. Petitions, there are none. So we move on to item 8, the forward plan, pages 13 to 27. Councillor Harlow.
Thank you. Under item IO 1027, local development plan, page 16, a point of clarification which has arisen from the Epping Inspector's report. Can, I think this is Danny Burton, confirm that there's not to be a gypsy traveller's site in East Harlow?
There's nothing in the plan, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I come back? The inspector made a specific reference to a gypsy and traveller site.
Page 9.
On page 9 of the report.
Section 34.
Oh, section 34, thank you.
Doesn't know.
There's nothing in the Harlow local plan with provision for traveller sites to the east of Harlow, and there's nothing in the proposed modifications to the plan to that effect either.
And we don't refer to gypsies.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. To Andrew Banridge, on page 9 of the Inspector's report for the Epping local plan, where it refers to the east of Harlow master plan area.
The Epping plan's not on the agenda.
Part 34, which relates to our local plan, refers to a traveller's site. Did you read the inspector's plan in relation to the east of Harlow master plan area? Because it says it plain as day on page 9.
Right, first of all, this isn't on our agenda. Andrew, are you able to answer this, or do you want to come back to that later?
I'm happy to answer it now and maybe provide a more detailed written response.
Well, let's try and stick to the agenda thereafter.
There are no requirements within the Harlow local plan to provide that site. If the Epping inspector has made comments around the Epping part of the east of Harlow site, and that's Epping Forest Hill, not Harlow Council.
Exactly. I suspect you're bringing this up in the wrong venue. But it's a very clear answer, thank you. Let's stick to the agenda. Councillor Johnson.
IO 10207 local development plan approval of modifications prior to consultation that's coming to the meeting next meeting. Will that officer's report include a full report on any provision for travellers' sites within the east of Harlow planning area?
I'm fairly sure that's been answered, but let's do it again.
There will be no reference to travellers' sites in the proposed modifications to come to Cabinet.
I really think that's a very, very clear answer given circumstance. So, are there anything else to do with the forward plan? Good. So, are we agreed to note that forward plan? Agreed. Lovely. So now let's move on to item 9, recent decisions taken by the leading deputy portfolio holder. There's nothing relevant to bring to this space, so we'll move on to item 10, the Joint Finance and Performance Report, Quarter 1, 2019 to 20, and you'll find that on pages 28 to 49. Who's going to move that?
So moved, Chair.
And I will second that, thank you. Councillor Danders, do you have anything to say on that matter?
Relatively good control of service budgets being maintained in the quarter. There is a forecast overspend of 215,000. The variations are dealt with on page 42, Chair, and obviously I'll be prepared to answer any questions.
So, questions then? Indeed, Figure go on. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Just confirm I had given notice of this question. Page 43 of the actual report itself, section 4, service-based analysis. There is no report from place on that page or the succeeding page, which is unhelpful because the only sizable variance on page 42 is actually undertakes for the enterprise zone, £215,000, which I'm sure by coincidence is the net overspend reported on page 28.
Thank you for that question. I think Simon, you can take on.
So we're in the process of realigning the table on page 42 for quarter 2. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that for quarter 1 to reflect the changes that have been put in place for the overall structure of the council. So the service-based analysis is focused around the new service groupings, whereas page 42, unfortunately at quarter 1, was only able to reflect the old service groupings, which included place services.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just on that, it is a substantial variance, and normally some examples there will be some explanation as to how it arose and what steps are being taken to ameliorate it.
So in response to the question on the particular entry in the table on page 42, the variance of £215,000, the majority of that variance is offset by the variance below head of place services, and that will be reflected in the quarter 2 report when the table is aligned to the new service groupings. The difference between the pay element of the variation and the total is in relation to costs that we've had to incur in dealing with costs associated with the CPO process on the enterprise zone land for which we've been through a CPO process.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. CS50, average waiting time of calls received by Contact Harlow. Note the over doubling of waiting time for callers to Contact Harlow in Q1, and I understand the explanation there of a retirement and a maternity leave causing that problem. My question is, did we not know that someone was going to retire, and did we not know that we were going to have a maternity leave?
Absolutely, we did. Neither of those things came as a surprise to us, Councillor Johnson. In addition, there's a seasonal variation which came into there, which we planned for. We also had some additional illnesses which weren't planned, which put further pressure on the service. And the good news is that in the months subsequent to this report, we're very much back on track.
Yeah, that's very good news that we're back on track, and it's very good news that we were able to cope with that. However, the explanation that we've been given as councillors there, had I not asked that question, was just that it was down to a retirement and a maternity leave. There was nothing about seasonality in the report. There was nothing about the excessive illness that you've just mentioned as a helpful clarification in the report. As a member of the opposition, I'm not subject to those access items that you've got there. I'm reading the report in front of me. So if there is real mitigation for these reasons, can we have that in the mitigation comment, please?
Point taken, Councillor Johnson. I hope my explanation is clear. That's right.
It was, thank you.
Any further questions? Good, so I think, where are we? Are we then, let's go back to the page, 28. Are we happy to accept recommendation A, parts 1, 2 and 3?
Agree.
Agreed. Thank you. So now we're moving on to item 11, the Housing Revenue Account, Q1 Finance Report, 19 to 20. Who's moving that?
So moved, Chair.
And I will second that, and you'll find that on pages 50 to 56.
Once again, good financial control being maintained, and the report highlights that there's a forecast underspend of £140,000. Given the size of the budget, that's quite, in my opinion, quite acceptable. The underspend is directly linked to the additional revenue funding required to support the Housing Capital Programme as a result of the carry forward schemes approved at the July Cabinet. And once again, if members are interested, the details are on page 55 and 56. And once again, I'm quite happy to answer questions.
Thank you. And are there any questions? Councillor Carter.
Thank you. And again, I have given notice of this question. Page 51, paragraph 4C. The impact of new gas contract has not yet been recognised in the invoicing received, and any additional costs in the HRA are in part recoverable from tenants and leaseholders. What I'm concerned about here is that tenants may receive backdated bills or substantial increases. I'd like to know what the landlord is doing about that to prevent that.
Thank you. Andrew.
I think it's safe to say that it's too early to say. I think what has happened is that we have introduced new heat meters to determine usage, which has been very helpful with the new methodology that we're going through. And this will enable actual consumption to be gauged, and that's matched against the new energy framework which we are operating under. And we're moving towards over the coming months to roll that out, and we'll be providing more information in the future.
Okay, won't face any backdated bills?
I think in the past there's been 3 or 4 different methodologies where there's a before and after, and we'll be gauging that as to what that means for each individual tenant and leaseholder, and we'll be recharging appropriately, but we'll be notifying them accordingly.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Right, so Are we happy to accept recommendation A, parts 1 and 2, and B?
Agreed.
So now let's move on to item 12, capital programmes, quarter 1 finance report 2019 to 20, which you will find on pages 57 to 71. And who's moving that?
So moved, Chair.
And I'll second that one as well.
Number of things here. The housing capital programme shows that capital expenditure is forecast to be 23.7 million, which is below budget. And once again, the details are on page 62. The housing capital programme, the forecast is 15.6 million, and once again, that's under the reasons given. Once again, pages 69 to 71.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Page 59, paragraph 13D, building council homes. Seems to be a theme on it, isn't it? Bushycroft and Elm Hatch. Preparatory work on Bushycroft commenced in 1819 to deliver 16 additional homes with a budget in 1920 of 2.6 million. Seems quite straightforward. Then turn the page over to paragraph 14, table 1, which shows the Readings and Bushycroft as being a couple allocated in 1920, but marked for carryover, which would seem to indicate that it's not going to be done in 1920 but in 2021 instead. So I'm wondering if somebody can provide some clarity as to when those properties are actually going to be built and what impact it has on retaining capital receipts, bearing in mind the 3-year rule, which is what I'm talking about.
The indication in table 1 is that the delivery of the final scheme will roll into 2021, but at the moment we're waiting for the prices to be returned for the actual construction of the site. And in terms of the capital receipts, the pooled receipts that we are holding at the current time, we are forecasting that we will still be in a position to be able to utilise all of the receipts that we've held back from pooling arrangements.
So you'll be able to spend it within the 3-year period?
That's our current estimate, yes.
As earmarked. But you don't know when you're going to start building, and you don't know when you're going to complete them.
Well,
I think the answer to the question is clear. You asked the question, will we have to be giving this money back? And the answer was no, we will have all the other plans to do that.
But not when the houses are going to be built.
Just repeat the question.
You don't know when you're going to start building these houses, and you don't know when they're going to be built and handed over.
I don't think that's what I said. Actually, what I said was that we have started the process for the pricing for the contract, and that will lead to a slight delay in the spending of the capital funds, but actually they're anticipated to be delivered in 2021 as a completed scheme, and that we will not have to repay any pooled receipts to the government.
So the houses won't be completed until 2021?
That's what I just said, yes.
Yeah. Although paragraph 13D says they're going to be built in 1920. There just seems to be some confusion between one and the other.
No, I think the confusion is that paragraph D says that the budget was allocated for 1920. It doesn't actually say the properties were anticipated in that line that they would be completed in 1920. It says the budget was allocated, but I think the words that you're using aren't reflected in paragraph D on page 59.
Okay, does that help? Okay, well, I'm sure that Mr. Freeman will find you some time if you need that explained in further detail. I got it. Any other questions? Good, so we are So are we happy to accept recommendations A and B on page 57? Agreed. Lovely. So now we're moving on to the Annual Treasury Management Report 2018 to 19, which is on page 72.
I formally move to.
Thank you, and I second it. Do you want to say anything on that matter, Councillor Danvers? No? Any questions? Any questions you want to bring to us? You have a good old chat amongst yourselves. I'll take that, that's a no. So therefore, are we happy to accept recommendation A on page 72?
Agreed.
Thank you. So moving swiftly on, item 14, the building cleaning contract. And you will find that on page 84. Who's moving that?
I am, Chair.
And second? Thank you very much. Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'll leave the room.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you. Well, if he chooses to, I'm not going to argue. Off you go, Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chair. Most of it is contained within the report, but obviously part and parcel of creating HTS to be able to deliver services, or for them to deliver services and actually bring better value to the council. And as the contract was up, it was actually without saving money by not going that tendering process and actually bringing the services or giving the services out to HTS.
Excellent news. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Edwards.
Just a question. Is that one of our aspirations, is that all staff should be on the living wage? And one of our aspirations is that staff should be on the minimum of the living wage. And I just wonder whether or not that's been taken into account in either the 2P or the discussions that are currently being had with HTS.
Yes, Chair. The 2P process has actually already identified that all staff that come across will be on the living wage. Part of those terms and conditions.
Well, I think that's good news. I think everybody should be paid on the living wage. If there are no other questions, are we happy to accept recommendation A, parts 1 and 2 on page 84?
Agreed.
Thank you. So, yes indeed. Let's move on then. I won't actually start any questions, but I can get the title out of the way. The disposal of land adjacent to the old Harlow Medical Centre, which you will find on pages 88 to 91. And again, I think...
I'll be moving it, Chair.
I'm happy to second, but I've got a couple of questions, Chair. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Same again, most of it's contained within the report, but we was approached by the Health Centre and CCG that about a very small piece of land that they would be interested in purchasing to actually deliver a better service to the residents of Old Harlow, and we're quite happy to facilitate that.
Sounds very straightforward.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions, if I may. Can you give me some assurance, whilst I completely welcome this initiative, can you assure me what the implications, if there are any, in relation to the current NHS funding that's actually allowing the practice to go forward and develop this? I'm worried about the timescales. So that's question 1. Do you want me to do the other 2 as well?
I'll do one at a time, if that matters.
Okay.
Makes it easy. So the timescales we envisage, obviously within here we've got I think it's 8 months within the report that it'll be done, but actually we envisage it's going to be a lot faster process than that, but the 8 months is well within the envelope of the time that they've got to spend the money. So it's well within,
Okay, I hope so. In relation to the second question, I'm a little bit concerned that whilst we're selling off council land, and this is going to be bought for health provision. As we know in Potter Street, the health service can sometimes change their minds. And what assurances will we be putting in place that actually, if there is any change in health provision, we can protect that land and bring it back to the council?
All of that will be covered within the agreements, the legal agreements, that we not only will it have to be used for the purpose that it's intended for. So there has been an assessment of it, and the current parking arrangements are actually, there's more parking than what they actually need most of the time, but there is an agreement in place to use the parking across the other side of the road. So there should be plenty of overspill parking for any staff and anybody visiting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Garnett.
Question and comment, if you Chair. I was approached about. Shall I talk to the question first?
Yeah.
Well, the question first. Councillor mentioned it, the 8 months, and I find that rather a lengthy period, because I think there is some urgency to get this new build up and running, because they're going to build 4 consultation rooms there, and with the pressure from Newhall and Gildon Park, they need it as quickly as possible. It's already been about 3 months in negotiation since I first brought it to the attention of the council. Is there any way of pushing that through?
We're very grateful for that question. We recognise 8 months looks like a long time, and we appreciate the urgency.
You're right, it is an urgent build, and it needs to be rolled out faster, but we only work to the time scales that they envisage at maximum, but all parties envisage it can be a lot faster than that, a lot faster.
Okay.
It's just the time scales that they've got in maximum time scales.
May I come back, Jen?
Can I have the questions first? Is this another question? Or is it
no, it's really I wanted to explain the situation.
You will in a second.
I will in a second. Okay, all right.
You want to comment?
Okay.
I've got a question.
So let's do a question.
Yeah, so just on part 6 on page 89, around the 8 months transaction period, what would be helpful to the ward councillors is if we could just be made aware of where the timescales actually finally land as the work continues on this. Clearly, because we're ward councillors, we want to be cited on something that is very important in terms of increasing primary care capacity in Jenner House.
Councillor Charles, that's a perfectly reasonable request, and we will meet it. Any other comments?
We've got comments.
Questions? Right, comments.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I said, I was approached by Dr. Anthony 2 or 3 months ago about this. That they were desperate to expand on this site. They didn't want to be forced into going to Gildon Park, which they couldn't afford anyway. The CCG couldn't afford it, so they asked me to take this forward, and I spoke to Brian, and he took the cudgels up from there. I've had various conversations since then as to how it's going, and it's obviously they want to get this up and running. As you said in your opening, it is a very small site. It's just a patch of concrete, which has probably it takes about 6 cars in there, which are the nurses generally are only visiting doctors because they've got their own car park as well. But it is, you know, and I said to Dr. Anthony, we don't want them to move to Gildon Park because most of the residents in Old, I shouldn't say this, but are fairly elderly, and to try and make their way from Old Harlow up to Gildon Park is not easy. So I'll ask you to perhaps in negotiations, I'm not financially, but if you bear in mind, it is just a patch of concrete, and it's useless to anybody, and this is probably the best thing they can do with it, is put a small little building extension. But I wouldn't like you to see that, you know, you think it's the golden egg, because it's CCG, whatever they pay us has got to come out of the CCG's budget. So if you can bear that in mind in negotiations. Thank you.
Yeah, can I first of all welcome the fact that this initial discussion that was kicked off between Dr. Anthony and Councillor Garnett then subsequently with Brian to tee up the conversation with Harlow Council, who has progressed to this report tonight. We have an ageing population in Old Harlow, and it is very important that we increase the capacity of GP provision at Jenner House. The facility of having 4 additional consultation rooms will not only help the existing population, but the future growth plans that are set out by the council. Whether you agree with them or not, it is important to make sure that the capacity is there to make sure that our ageing population in Old Harlow is looked after and the wider health needs. I am concerned about the timescales, and I am grateful for the fact that the council will, in a timely fashion, provide us with the accurate timescales. The only other point I would make, and I do see where Councillor Durkin is coming from on this, but I think that this land should be handed over to to Jenner House without restrictions, because we need to make sure that that land then becomes a fundamental part of Jenner House and can be used for health and well-being in the Old Harlow area. And I think that's really important. I can understand where Councillor Durkin is coming from on this, but you wouldn't blame me as the Old Harlow Ward Councillor to be championing the fact that we have a fantastic practice manager at Jenner House and GPs, and of course the work of the West Essex CCG in moving this forward is positive. It hasn't been positive in other parts of the town, and I recognise that. But this is a good news story for Old Harlow, and I thank my colleague Councillor Garnett, who's teed up this conversation with the council, and the ongoing work that will progress as a result.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Now, I think my understanding of what Councillor Strachan said, he made it very clear that this land will be made available to Jenner House as long as it remains a health centre. So it's perfectly protected as long as it remains a health centre. But unfortunately, the reality that we've seen in Osler House, for example, is that GP surgeries are operating as quasi-private businesses, and so if something were to happen, we wouldn't want to lose that land. And I think that's perfectly reasonable, because something would have to happen first. Whilst it's a health centre, whilst it's a surgery, that land will remain as part of it. And thank you for recognising that whilst this is good news for Old Harlow, much of the rest of Harlow doesn't have that good news. In fact, it's very bad news. Osler House was bad news for the residents around it, many of whom, Councillor Garnett, are elderly and don't need to travel as they now have to other doctors' surgeries. It's increased the pressure on the Hamilton surgery, which is my own surgery, where on 4 occasions I've tried to get a doctor's appointment and there are none available within the 2-week period that they'll go to. And I believe the same is true for Keats House surgery, which is facing the same crisis of demand and lack of supply. So good news for Jenner, but it's not. And let's celebrate that, but let's not ignore the crisis across the rest of Harlow.
Make a comment on that, if you like. Thank you. Perhaps they ought to have a word with Dr. Anthony and see how they managed to make it so efficient.
I don't want to get into the debate about what is happening in primary care. The point that I was making is that whilst we're agreeing something today, we've got to think about what happens in 30 years' time. And actually, if we think about the people they weren't sitting in this chamber when Potter Street was designed, I don't think anybody at that time envisaged that we would be losing something. So all I'm trying to suggest is that it does give us a point of protection for a legacy just in case. And finally, primary care is moving in a very different direction. So whereas at the moment we have GP surgeries in different areas, if you actually look at the health economy and where we're going, and if you look at what is happening at Lister House, that may well be a model that we will all have to face sometime in the future. So all I was suggesting is actually a legacy to protect our position when most of us will no longer be around.
You'll still be around.
But you'll still be around.
Lucky you. I don't think we need to debate this anymore. Are we happy to say recommendation A?
Agreed.
Oh, sorry. Are we happy to accept recommendations A, B and C.
Agree.
Thank you. So now let's move on to item 16, communications from committees, working groups, parties and panels. A, this is a referral from the Religious Diversity Working Party. You'll find it on page 92 to 99. Councillor Shears.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just an update really of what's been going on the Religious Diversity Panel. It's due to come to Cabinet in December with final recommendations. So I hope you find any information useful.
I should have said that I'm seconding. Any questions on that? Happy to accept recommendation A?
Agree.
Good. So I'm proposing that we note the minutes of the Harlow Local Highways Panel, pages 100 and 121, and the minutes of the Cabinet Overview Working Group. Unless there are any questions on those? Noted? Thank you. I've not been made aware of any other business, so thank you all for coming and we'll close the meeting.